Hi, welcome back to another episode of Real-World Serverless, a podcast where I speak with real-world practitioners and get their stories from the trenches. Today, I'm joined by Shawn Wang, who you may know as probably the person who coined the term AI engineer. But let's talk about that in a minute. So Shawn, welcome to the show.
Hey, and really good to be here. I've been following you for a long time, and I think we've had chats before, but this is the first chat that we're going to have about all the AI stuff that's been happening. And I've been spending the past year going really, really hard on it.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of things that you've been doing on the AI side of things, like smol-developer and small AI project, which I'd like to talk about in a minute. But I guess one of the things I saw you wrote about a couple of months ago was this article called The Rise of the AI Engineer. And I remember you saying that it's likely going to be the highest demand engineering job of the decade. And since you wrote that post, I've been seeing more and more job postings that are looking for AI engineers. So for anyone who's not been kind of following this whole movement, who's not familiar with this new job title, how would you define as the AI engineer, and how is it different from, say, application developers using AI tools and maybe machine learning engineers, building the next ChatGPT model?
Yeah. So I am basically putting a name to the phenomenon that is happening with the proliferation of large language models, and basically the GPT 3 and 4 becoming good enough for engineers to repurpose it to general purpose reasoning and code generation use cases. And so the classic difference between ML engineers and AI engineers is a chart that people should have, that you can see in the Rise of the AI Engineer blog post, where it's a spectrum from the left to the right. On the left, it is sort of research constrained, and on the right is product constrained. So on the left, you have all the research scientists, the PhDs, coming on new algorithms and training and figuring out how to train the next great language model. Or it doesn't have to be a language model; it can just be training any models whatsoever. And then the ML engineers, who are more tuned towards serving them and inferencing, and also a little bit of data pipelines and stuff. And then there's a sort of dotted line in the middle for the API. What happens after you serve the models? And typically, historically, that model gets thrown over the wall, and then it is up to the job of the software engineers to integrate them within the products for the end customer, end user to use. What's changing in that landscape is that there's an emerging stack that is starting very small and growing over time, that is starting at the API layer and then moving towards the software engineering layer. So effectively, software engineers specializing in AI applications is going to become known as the AI engineer. And why this is a separate job title is the same reason why software engineers call themselves DevOps engineers. They call themselves data engineers. It just marks that is the specialty that they've chosen within the general field of software engineering. Of course, we share a lot of similar tools, and of course, we share a lot of similar best practices, but there are going to be a lot of day-to-day conversations and day-to-day tooling that is going to be very different. And so I basically saw that happening live. I saw that people were talking a totally different language. Like if you're immersed in AI, you take a lot of things like RAG, retrieval augmented generation. You take that for granted. Everyone knows the same papers. Everyone has seen the same demos. Everyone uses the same stacks. That is a specialization that is emerging, and companies want to hire for them. People want to become more specialized there. So I think there's a very strong merging of the minds there. And I think the last point I'll make is that all of this could have happened 10 years before. It's not strictly new, except for one thing, which is the emergence of foundation model labs that are effectively research or ML departments as a service, right? Like, so instead of buying and building your own ML researchers and ML engineers in-house within your company, now all these foundation models labs are effectively serving as ML engineers and ML researchers as a service, right? So you call them as a vendor, as an API. And therefore, you'll need a different set of skills to integrate those applications and deal with them, because they are mostly closed source. And then there's a separate group for open source models, which you can also host, and that is much more the classic domain of ML engineering. At the same time, there's still so much product to build between the models and the final end product. That is going to be the topic of AI engineering.
Right, and I guess with new services like AWS Bedrock, those are specifically targeting the AI engineers who are going to be building those integrations, who are going to be working with those both the foundational models, but also the open source models, and then building a layer on top of that by combining tool chains like LangChain and a bit of prompt engineering to then actually productionize the language models and making applications out of it using RAG and other techniques like that. Now that with the chat, the OpenAI Dev Day that just passed, and they've announced the GPTs, this additional way of for you to build AI agents. So do you think that whole sort of tool chain is also going to shift again now that OpenAI is kind of changing the landscape for the tool chains?
Yeah, I used to work at AWS, and you are very familiar with the AWS ecosystem. If yesterday at Dev Day felt very much like the reInvent moment when, classically we call this the red wedding moment. Like, you invite all your customers in there and you find out which one of you are going to die because, the main platform already built your features. So that's a bit of a joke, mostly because OpenAI's movements have been very friendly to developers. I think they built in some of the agents stuff, some of the stateful stuff that other companies have been building, but they built the simplest possible version of them. It's actually like pretty bad if you actually try to use it and evaluate it on any reasonable metric. And that's fine. That's a good thing. It will improve over time, and OpenAI will compete with its own customers, and that is fine. But at the end of the day, OpenAI is most focused on general intelligence, and the AI engineering stack is much more focused on, let's say, customization and sophistication for the largest users. So I don't really see them in conflict because OpenAI is basically just going to be the first one-stop default shop for anything that you might want. And then when you want more customization, you will reach out to the broader ecosystem of vendors. And I think that's probably a healthy balance. And it's the same thing with Amazon.
Right. So I guess in that case, it kind of reminds me of all the observability tooling from AWS that it meets the basic requirements, but the moment you kind of step out of that, getting started, building something very simple, now you need to have a more specialized vendor looking after things that you just can't get from AWS because AWS only doing that level 1 thing. Now you need level 2 and level 3 and level 4, and you need more specialized, more capable vendors to provide those capabilities for your business. So I guess you're thinking about it's going to be the same thing where OpenAI is going to give you that really basic tooling, but then pretty soon, once you get to something more sophisticated, you're going to need to have someone who's able to customize the model or doing some other work to actually give you the desired business capabilities.
Yeah, and I'll give you a very simple example. So I'm a book author. I think we've maybe talked before about my book, so one of the first things that when I got access to the new GPT assistance capability was I uploaded my book and then tried to create a book chat, right? And so I asked it, what is in chapter 9, and it's supposed to go to chapter 9 and retrieve all of that and summarize that. We're using its 128K context, which can fit the whole book, to be honest. It did not. It hallucinated the contents of my book. So it was wrong. Like it was just straight up wrong. And that's very dangerous, right? Because that means I cannot, as a book author, endorse this thing because I cannot. I was gonna try to ship it to my customers and say, hey, you can buy the book and the book comes with a chat, so you can chat with the book. And I wanted to use the default OpenAI GPT with it. Just try it with any PDF that you know very well. Maybe something longer so that it has to sort of index and retrieve things rather than just stuff everything into the context. But it's pretty obvious pretty soon enough that the defaults are actually not very good. And there's no way to customize it. So the only way to do it is to use the existing stack like LangChain and LangIndex. So in that sense, I think you can very easily illustrate this to yourself by just trying out the stuff that already exists in the playground and in ChatGPT to understand how basic the OpenAI implementations are. It's not a criticism of them. I think they want zero configuration defaults for the vast majority of users. And unfortunately, the zero configuration default not that good right now, but it's going to improve. At the same time, there are always going to be more demanding people who want more configuration.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that the medical industry is one of the, I guess, the leading industries that are making use of AI, and it's one of the fields that are advancing the most with AI. And I imagine, especially in that field, you don't want the AI to hallucinate any answers. So when people are asking about, for advice, for potentially, diagnosing symptoms, you definitely don't want any hallucinations happening over there. You mentioned your book, so I guess we're talking about the Coding Career Handbook. So you actually wrote that back in 2020, I think, before the whole Gen AI stuff started happening. So I imagine a lot of advice that you gave back then is probably need to be updated. So I guess the question is, what would you change if we were to write this book again today with all the AI changes that's happened the last couple of years in mind?
So what is the what specifically about the changes would you want to focus on?
Yeah, so I guess that the change is more about as someone who's trying to break into this software industry, what kind of advice would you give someone to do that now, especially with AI is changing everything?
Yeah, I actually don't think that it changes that much. In fact, I think it got a lot easier to learn how to code, because now when you're stuck, you can ask an AI for help instead of filing a question on Stack Overflow and then getting it closed as a duplicate of a completely different question from 5 years ago. So I think in that sense, I think it's much easier to learn to code. I have always said that AI engineering is 90% the same skills as software engineering, and then 10% a slightly different stack that you need to understand, and you need to read papers, and you have to understand that things move a lot faster in this field than in other fields, just because it's so immature compared to other fields. So I think if you're comfortable with all that, you can get started right away. I have someone working on my team who just graduated from bootcamp this year, and he needs to learn a lot of software engineering skills. But then he can also pick up AI stuff along the way. It is just a new API to program with different assumptions, a new system to program with different assumptions. But ultimately, the same traditional path, except that you have a tutor on demand anytime you want it, which is very cool.
Yeah. I do find that this is really, I guess it's a lot easier now that you've got tools like a Copilot and things like that, which, if you can describe what it is you want to do sufficiently, they're able to spit out a code. And I use a ChatGPT, for example, to give me a high-level description for how should I approach this particular problem. A lot of the solutions that it give in terms of the details are often wrong by a tiny bit. But at least from the high level, the approach, I find that quite useful. But doesn't that also mean that someone who's starting now has got another stack they have to learn besides the software, the programming language, the cloud services, all these other things? And now you've also got LLMs and the tool and the line chain, all these other things you have learned as well.
It's no big deal. It really is no. I do actually think about it as a new cloud. And I think this is very relevant for your audience. I spent a lot of time learning and exploring AWS. Fun fact: so Satya Nadella was at Dev Day, and yesterday I attended a private dinner that he had, and I asked him this question, which is, when you sign up for OpenAI and ChatGPT and you start building with it, it runs compute because it now has code interpreter, so it can execute code. Right? It stores files. I can upload files and have it return and read files and all that. And then it even does domain registration. So when you create a GPT and share it publicly, they actually ask you to hook up a domain and add a TXT record to your domain so that they can sort of proxy it or whatever. Then I'm like, wait, is OpenAI becoming the fourth major cloud? And so I asked Satya this, and I asked him basically, are you enabling your next competitor? Are you the Yahoo to OpenAI's Google, right? Like, are you like sort of swapping out your main services, and Google's serving the actual valuable thing, and then Google's going to replace you? And Satya said, like, we're good partners, blah blah blah. He has to say that because he's a public company CEO. But I do think like this is a new sort of kind of way to interact with cloud services that state is managed in a different way, compute is managed in a different way, networking and bandwidth or whatever. Like they have different implications here, but there's like the same principles, and you're learning a new cloud system just like you would if you are a general sort of desktop programmer and you had to learn cloud for the first time. There's all these foreign concepts when you learn AWS for the first time, when you learn Azure for the first time, and it's no different here. It's just a new system. It's maybe less deterministic, I would say that, and then it also deprecates a lot quicker. The average lifespan of a model now is like 6 months. So imagine building production services on these things and then having them degrade randomly overnight, or and you can't really trace it because there's 175 billion parameters for it to go wrong. So yeah, I would say like it is a new stack. It is much more immature, but it is a career choice for you, whether or not you want to build on mature stacks or you want to make your name in a new stack that will become mature at some point. And something I talk about a lot for career advice for software engineers is that once you have some baseline level of job security, that you can get a job. If worst comes to worst, you can make your living, you can feed your family. Then you should attach yourself to something that you believe will be a mega trend to grow over the next 10 years, because it is much easier to make your name being early in something than to be late in something and build on top of an existing stack of thought leadership and existing frameworks that you have to catch up on, right? Like when everybody is on the same footing because nobody knows anything, you have an equal playing field.
Yeah, I guess that kind of mirrors a lot of the things that you've done in your career as well, because you came from a non-IT background and you went into IT, you got into the cloud pretty much straight away, and then you would do the whole learning in public thing as you were learning to build, and then you got into going into AI pretty early, and you started building things like a smol-developer, and you started to write about AI in the latent space and the things like that, which I think that's just watching your career progression has been super impressive the last couple of years. So firstly, I guess well done.
Yeah, I should mention. I guess I would advise everyone to learn in public, right? That is the core principle that I live by, and it has really served me very well in this transition, but in all future things that I do. And I will say that latent space has been a huge, like probably the most successful thing I've done so far. Which is a combination of sort of newsletter and podcasts, and like we were the only invited podcast to OpenAI Dev Day to cover it, and because they understand that we are builders as well, and we're we do quality work, and I think they recognize that, and so I feel like people like yourself as well, like you also put a lot of thought leadership out there. I quote your orchestration versus choreography article all the time, and you do your courses and you do this podcast, and I think it's a community service, but two, it's a way for you yourself to ask questions that you're thinking about live, and just get it processed in public by other people, right? Like I'm sure you get a lot of personal benefit out of doing this stuff.
Yeah, talking to people like yourself who really know their space really well, and just asking the questions that I've been thinking about has been super useful for me, just in terms of learning and progression and getting a broader perspective on the software industry as a whole. So that's been super useful for me doing this podcast. And we've actually talked about the OpenAI's Dev Day a couple of times now. So I guess maybe let's just talk about that. And they've obviously announced lots of pretty big things. What were the biggest highlight for you? What do you think of the things that they've announced has the biggest impact in the next coming months and the years?
Yeah, I think you have to really look at it as the equivalent of OpenAI's WWDC. So which is Apple's developer conference. even though it's called a dev day, it's a developer conference, whatever. Half of it was consumer facing. Half of it was on ChatGPT, a no code, a no code experience for creating GPTs, which is a horrible name for what they're calling agents. But it's fine. It's whatever. They get to call it whatever they want. I think it's a very good platform move. I think it's a much better implementation of what plugins should have been that they launched in March. And I think for the non-technical audience, this is the best way to code with natural language that we've ever seen. I think Notion will be launching their AI integration, their sort of AI upgrade in a few months, and you'll see another one that I personally have been demoed, and I think it's really compelling. But I think ChatGPT is one, and obviously is going to reach 100 million people. They disclose 100 million weekly active users, which is crazy. So like, yeah, everyone's going to experience that. And when you build for that big of an audience, you have to cater to the no code market. And so I think that is very good. Like there's a whole category of apps that can be built with completely no code, and AI engineers and developers should not even touch it. They should just let the non-technical people build their own stuff, and that's fine. The second part of the day was more about the APIs, and that is about OpenAI as a developer platform, and that was also extremely impactful and exciting. Every single modality has an API now, including the ones that we did not expect them to release. So we knew that DALL-E 3 and GPT-4 Vision were coming as APIs, but the whisper and the rumor on the street was that they weren't ready, they didn't have enough GPUs, blah, blah, blah. All wrong. All of them were wrong. They released everything. and not just that, they also released text-to-speech, which is functionality that was released, which exists in ChatGPT, but nobody had any idea that they would be releasing it in the API as well. And then finally, the stateful APIs that they were releasing basically kind of eliminates a lot of the orchestration that you would need to set up for a simple chat stack. And so all in all, like very, very impactful updates. And I think personally, I'm most interested in the Vision API, because this is by far, like by a country mile, the most advanced vision model the world has ever seen. And now it's available for a few cents per call or whatever, less, a fraction of a cent per call. What can you do if your apps can see? That is just an open-ended question that I think everyone's still exploring. And when I say see, I don't mean see the real world as well. You can see the real world, but you can also see your desktop. You can also see drawings. You can also see your architecture design and translate that to code, right? So it just becomes extremely flexible, because it starts to add capabilities that humans have and better models what humans can do. And so what can you do with a serverless human?
Yeah, I saw quite a few examples of people playing around with that, and I think for a few examples where just hand drawn some architecture diagram with some Lambda function API gateway, and then give me the CloudFormation for this. So basically, saves you a couple of hours of just typing out.
Wait, did they draw the logo? Did they draw the API gateway logos and stuff?
Yeah, they draw the API gateway logo with a line. Yeah, recognize that, and they just gave it as a CloudFormation template with API gateway connecting to Lambda with the Lambda permissions and the usual stuff. And I think you have to fill in some gaps on the URL path and things like that. But the basic template is there, so you can probably just start by okay. Bootstrap new project. Here's let's do like architecture diagram on a board. Take a picture of it, and then just turn it into CloudFormation or SAM or whatever, and that's your starting template for your project. Excited to see where that's going to go, because the kind of, like you said, the kind of use cases there is almost endless.
Yeah, I'll mention. Okay, I want to mention one more thing. For the people who are listening and thinking like, that is what the potential vision is, which is, cute drawing, turn it to a thing, right? Really, really try to not stop there. Really, really try to think about what humans do when they debug and when they work with you. So, what can you do if you hook up a Vision API to your error logs, right? To debug your application while it's in errors, and then have it navigate your backend to figure out where the error is, and to do sort of tier 0 triaging of tasks, right? Like, so, I think one of the concerns or where people make mistakes is they look at a cute demo, they say, oh, that's cute, and then they continue on carrying on with their day. You have to be imaginative. You have to try to push yourself to think about how you use your eyes, or how you use your other sensibilities, your reasoning capabilities, your contextual knowledge, and think out of the box, because that is where the real alpha is. So, for example, I talked with I talked to the founders of a startup that is doing sort of dev observability, and they asked me, how they want to add AI capabilities, and they showed me their sort of Copilot thing where they have this sort of custom query language, and they augmented it to add sort of AI suggestions things. And I'm like, okay, cool. That is one way you're adding AI into your application, which is on-demand Copilot sort of assisting your users. But that is like sipping from a fire hose. Like, you have been granted this awesome opportunity to access intelligence on demand, and all you are doing is autocomplete. So I challenged them to say, like, okay, how can you, like, this is not good enough. How can you 100x your intelligence usage? To use it on like completely like radical things to completely change the way that people work. Because the worst mistake in this field, when things are moving this fast and capabilities are launching this rapidly, the worst mistake is incrementalism. And I really want to advise people to try to break past that, because we are all very used to incrementalism. Like, we're all used to like the slow boiled, like, oh, it takes 10 years to build a database. So like, if it's not good for me this year, I'll wait a year. Like a very, very classic, tech selection problem. But I think, it behooves people, especially who are early adopters, who want to gain an advantage, to be creative and to try to, implement, things in very aggressive, very expensive fashions, because all those costs will come down, right? Like, Sam Altman came in and slashed the cost of GPT-4 by 3x. And that was like, GPT-4 is 6 months old, right? And the cost came down 3x. It's going to keep going down. So you want to build expensive, and then it will go down. But the people who are building expensive today will have maxed out the capabilities, while the people who are only building for today's costs, are going to underuse AI. Do you know what I mean?
That's a really good point. And that's something that I guess I've seen a few cases where, like I said, we are companies that are building AI assistants, as opposed to, AI assistants that are helping the customer, generate like a graph or something, and then helping them, answering questions, or help them answer questions, as opposed to just look at a graph and then just tell the customer what's wrong. So rather than helping the customer get to the answer gradually, just tell them what the problem is. If you have the AI capability to do that.
Yeah, or like run it in the background without them even looking at their dashboards, right? Like, why should you have a dashboard? That kind of like really reimagine everything.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point about the incrementalism. And speaking of which, I think as you recently, I think you tweeted something about the AGI is going to be achieved incrementally. Was that you that tweeted that?
Yeah. That was my term for it. So do you want me to explain?
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay, all right. So this is a joke reference to Sam Altman, who recently trolled everybody on Reddit by saying that AGI has been achieved internally. That was from his actual Reddit account that he posted in a random forum somewhere. And everyone was like, oh my God, like OpenAI has announced AGI or whatever. And then obviously he said, like, calm down, guys. This is not serious. I'm just trolling you guys. You guys have no chill, right? Like, you can't even take a joke. You can't recognize an obvious joke when you see one. But he is serious about building AGI. On Dev Day, when Satya Nadella came on stage, and by the way, OpenAI is the only company that can bring Satya Nadella for like a 2-minute appearance, and he will fly down to San Francisco for you and like show up and go like, oh yeah, thanks for your business, and then, it's really funny. But when he shook hands with Satya, he said the thing that I captioned in the screenshot, which is, I'm excited for us to build AGI together. he's extremely serious about building AGI. He just it's not there yet. But the reason it's not there yet is this is what slow takeoff looks like, right? So we are everyone in AI is sort of concerned about the existential threat of humans versus AI, and for him, the way that the existential debates typically map out to is whether or not you want slow timeline versus fast timeline, and then slow takeoff versus fast takeoff. So slow timeline means we will take many millennia and centuries to build AI. Fast timeline means we'll build it relatively quickly. Slow takeoff is the slope of that chart. Whether or not you want it to go like this and curve out, or you want to go like this and curve out. And I'm showing something on image, which is not going to sound good on audio. But effectively, like, do you want the slope to be steep at the start, or do you want it to be shallow at the start, and towards eventually achieving your goal? And something that Sam and all of OpenAI, they care about this more than being open, right? OpenAI, everyone makes fun of it for not being open source, but they care about slow timelines more than open source. They care that they wake up everybody. Now everybody's woken up. They wake up everybody to the fact that like machines can approximate thinking. It is maybe not perfect thinking. It is not actual thinking, but it is thinking in the same way that planes are inspired by birds. They also fly, but they fly very differently. And I think you should think about machine intelligence the same way, right? Like machine intelligence also thinks, but they think very differently than humans. They might think better than humans. They might think faster than humans. They will outlive humans. And so, one, wake up everybody. Two, get everybody using it to improve their lives. Three, figure out how to coexist. Because what is at stake is potentially that they replace us, right? Like two machines which can run billions of flops. Like we are like trees. And the risk is that we are the organic, slow-moving matter, and there's this fast-moving life form that is slowly emerging and evolving that will replace us. So I think all I'm saying there in the AGI is incremental piece is that everything that they released at Dev Day feels like fast movement. It feels like, oh my God, all the APIs are here. I don't know what to build with them. I'm being overwhelmed. But actually, this is what slow looks like.
Yeah, I guess slow and fast is relative to who's perceiving it.
It's relative.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and it also just shows honestly how slow other cloud services providers are, right? Like a lot of people are like, we ship like version 5 of our new database. Like we now have off. Like, come on, guys. Like, we can do better than this.
Yeah, and on the whole AGI thing, I've also been reading so many different opinions in terms of how dangerous it is and how close we are. On the one hand, you've got people like Elon, who was asking for, penning a whole open letter about we should all stop the AI research for 6 months, and then 8 months later, he releases Grok, and then you've also got I forgot his name, the guy that founded the Google Brain, came out a while back. He left Google so that he can speak publicly about the risk of AGI. And then
Jeff Hinton.
Yes, that's it. That's him. Yeah. And then a couple of days ago, I saw a new paper from Google DeepMind, which is talking about how basically saying the current LLM technologies is not likely to lead to generalizations, which I guess they are implying that you're not going to build AGI from the current LLM architectures or technologies. And then I think that the next day I read Andrew Ng came out and said big tech has basically been playing up the risk of AI just so that they can weaponize legislation to basically stop open source models, because that's a true danger for those big tech companies. I think Google at one point said that they have no moat because the open source model can just eat their lunch as well. So I guess what I'm saying is that I'm just been reading so many different opinions about the whole AGI, where we are, and what is the true risk, and it's just been really hard to get an opinion about what to think about this whole thing, because you got credible people from both sides just saying completely different things.
Yeah. I treat that as politics, and it's not the domain of engineering. So there's a place and time for politics, and people can talk about that at the dinner table. But I don't make it any significant part of my conversations as an AI engineer. And I think that is where I leave it, because what we try to do as engineers is try to make falsifiable claims, right? To understand the true nature of the technology that we can build and max out the capabilities of what we have today, so we can build products for real users. Anything beyond that is the domain of politicians, researchers, whatever. I don't really know. Yeah. and that saves me a lot of time, right? Deciding that I don't know, deciding that I will never be an expert in that, means that I should just not spend time on it.
Right. Just focus on the things that you can have control over, things that you know can be true, can be verified. Okay.
Yeah, it's a personal, like there's a circle of concern and a circle of influence, right? Which is a Stephen Covey concept. And having too wide of a circle of concern that is outside your circle of influence means that you care about a lot of things which you have absolutely no power over. And that is a huge, fantastic way to waste your life, just worrying about things that you have no control over. So why not? Let's focus on things that we care about, things that we can control, and grow that over time, and grow our influence and impact. And if you someday find yourself in a position to impact global policy on AI regulation, sure, then you can concern yourself with that. But right now, let's build.
That's good advice. That's also why I kind of stopped caring as much about football as I used to. Used to get really upset about the football results, but then I realized, like you said, those are things I have no control over, but I can care a lot about them. And so, I think over time I just got slightly more arm's distance. Still watch football now and then, but just don't get the super, I don't know, emotionally invested. I guess that's the right way to describe it.
Yeah.
So talking about the building stuff, so one of the things you've been working on for a while is smol-developer, and I guess which is one of the projects under the whole smol AI, umbrella. For folks who haven't seen it before, can you just tell us about smol-developer and maybe smol AI as well? What it is,
yes.
And what's your goal for the project?
Okay, so you said this is video. Would you want to see the video? We have a demo, or we can just describe it.
If you can demo something, that'd be great. For folks who are listening on the Spotify or some podcast platform, you can find the link to the YouTube recording as well, so you can watch the demo in its full fidelity.
I know as a podcaster, it's very hard to get people to sign up for the YouTube of the podcast. So everybody, please sign up to the YouTube of the podcast. I know it's very hard. I started this in a weekend, but effectively, I think that every Copilot and other tool out there is meant for adding incremental small things to existing code. But when I want to make my own standalone apps, like one-off apps, it is hard to start a new code base from scratch, like completely from scratch. And so what I made was this, which is effectively a smol-developer who just scaffolds out the code base and goes from 0 to 1, right? Because I found this to be the gap in the market with regards to all the code assistance tools, right? Everything else is kind of trying to add small things to your code base. Here it is starting a new code base from scratch. So you can use those tools in complement with each other. But I wanted to have this to start with. And the main idea is that you have this little sort of Python thing. You install dependencies, and then you run Python with like a prompt, right? It starts to build something that is great. But then you can gradually upgrade that over time into a full prompt file. And I can show you what that prompt looks like. And here's what coding with prompts can look like as well. It looks like my GitHub is pretty slow to load my prompts for some reason. So here I want to build a Chrome extension that only does one thing, right? So here I wanted to read the current page and then send a page to Anthropic Claude API. I wanted to display animations. I have never learned CSS animations, but once I describe the animations, it does the CSS animations. I wanted to add in some prompts. So here I have suggested names for things. I have a prompt inside a code block inside of a prompt. I have it to use storage for an API key. And I have it specify the format of output that I want. Here, I'm asking it to use a new API that it's never seen before. So instead of figuring out how to code it, I just paste in the docs. So I did that. And then while I was debugging, I just kind of paste advice that I see work. And now I can sort of absorb all that advice. So when you see the sort of video, it actually looks like this. There's a whole bunch of videos that people can see, but effectively I can sort of send you over to that video, and you can see that for yourself. But I didn't want to waste any time setting this up, although it looks like YouTube is taking a while to load this anyway. But effectively, this is how it looks when you actually run that prompt, which is it generates a code base. You can land on any blog post, and you can click on the code extension, and then it would just read that code. It's going to store the URL. It has the loading bar animation that I asked for, and then it's gonna make API calls, and it's going to return the results in exactly the format that I wanted. But this is a one-off app that I wanted to build for myself that is now made easier because I had my own smol-developer, right? Like I just write in English the stuff that I wanted. It does take technical knowledge, right? Like everything that I put here was sort of technical knowledge, and I did about 20 or 30 iterations building this. But now I don't have to remember how to make a Chrome extension. I don't have to sweat the minor details of like updating this file to match this other file to do this other thing. It just figures it out all for me. And I think that is the way that most new projects should be started. And I think it enables you making 100 one-off apps. Like now it lowers the activation energy for making apps to something that's so easy that you shouldn't even think about it. You can make fun apps that's personal, that are only for one person, and that is great. So it enables a long tail of small apps, and I really like that. Any questions? I feel like I've been talking for a little bit.
No, I think this is great, and also with the new app marketplace that OpenAI is launching. I wonder there's also a place for someone using smol-developer to help them essentially build a new AI app that's going to go into the OpenAI marketplace, App Store. What do they call it? App Store? Is that what they call it?
They say call it GPT Store. I think it's a horrible name because GPT is already means
GPT
a
Store,
specific type of language model. Well, yeah. Whatever. Yeah, that is a really good way to flex your capabilities in prompt engineering and AI engineering in the first place, right? This AI engineering is what I call this thesis of 1 + 2 = 3. So software 1.0 is manually handwritten code with for loops, if statements, all that. Software 2.0 is machine learned code where you learn the weights to things based on a whole bunch of data. And software 3.0 is the age of foundation models where you feed in a bunch of unsupervised learned code where you don't even have supervised like test and train sets or labeled sets. And then you prompt it, and then you prompt it and get some output out. And so the 1 + 2 = 3 thesis means that in order to be very good at foundation model usage, you actually have to write software 1.0 code, like traditional boring software engineering code, to make the most usage out of software 3.0. And so AI engineers will be a superset of prompt engineers for this reason, because we can write code to wield language models rather than just prompt it. And that's obvious to me. That's obvious to most people. But it's summarized in this sort of 1 + 2 = 3 thesis.
Okay, that's a very interesting thesis. But also, I guess in that case, I'll be slightly worried as a newcomer because now that means I'm at a huge disadvantage because I haven't gone to the software 1.0 phase. I mean, for me, it's great because that means for folks like me who's been doing the software 1.0 for so many years, I'm kind of in a good place. But what about for newcomers coming into this? And does that mean that they are inherently at a disadvantage where they're learning software engineering from a prompting side only?
Yeah, no one said that it would be fair, right? No, the world has no obligation to be fair to you. So you just play the cards that you're dealt, and you do the best that you can. But two, like I said before, it is actually much easier to learn software 1.0 because of chatbots and all these things. So I think you have the disadvantage of starting later than everybody else, and then you have the advantage that it is actually a lot easier to learn. So I think it net offsets each other somewhat. You will never replace years of experience in practical production scenarios, right? And that's something that everybody has to go through. But yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So in that case, with smol-developer, what's been some of the more interesting or most, I guess, creative stuff that applications that your users have built so far?
Yeah, people have built VS Code extensions. People have built a CRM. People have built full stack, MongoDB, Express, React, Node apps, and then people have built so small like ChatGPT plugins. This is before yesterday's Dev Day announcements. But anything where like the scope is small, the code base is small, it's like a one-off thing. It's like, oh man, I wish I had an app to do that, and then you don't do it because it takes some effort to set things up and learn the APIs for it. Now you can just kind of rely on the language model to scaffold that out most for you, and then you do the last mile customization yourself. So a lot of single-purpose apps, and I think that's fine. Which is another level from like one-off scripting. A lot of people have like sort of one-off scripts that they store somewhere in some markdown file or whatever, and then copy paste whenever they need it. This is the general purpose version of that, which is like instead of scripting, just like prompt it with natural language and then scaffold out the code base. Yeah, and then yeah, saves a bunch of time. Yeah, for sure. So for me, like smol-developer is a project that really unexpectedly blew up because it was a new coding agent that everybody felt like it fit a need in their use case. But it's not going to make money, right? Greenfield is always going to be small things. Like it's not going to make money. So I've always been interested in trying to build a company or trying to find a space to build a startup in. And what Small AI should be is a platform for people to start building their apps in the same way that smol-developer is a platform is a project for people to scaffold out new apps. And that's what I'm hopefully working on going forward. In the meantime, I've just been doing a lot of exploration of the space. So for me, I always like my process is mostly public. So I do Latent Space as a podcast and newsletter. I just ran the first AI Engineer Summit, which you can find on YouTube. And it's going to be run twice a year. And for me, like that is my KubeCon. Like if cloud native was a thing, and and KubeCon is the conference to serve the cloud native audience, then AI Engineer Summit is my attempt to serve that AI engineer audience.
Okay, great. And I will put a link to the AI or to the summit put a YouTube link in the description below as well, so anyone can go and check it out. So in that case, I guess my last question is, how do you think software engineering is going to look like in 5 years? Are we all going to be, still writing code, or are we going to be just writing everything in plain English, like you're doing with a smol-developer, like you're doing with prompt engineering? Is English going to be the next mainstream programming language?
Yeah, English is going to be the programming language for non-technical users, right? This is called end user computing. And the vast majority of humans will always be non-technical, and that's okay. But I think the way that we code is still going to be very much software 1.0 based, but I think that's why that's why the 1 + 2 = 3 thesis is very strong, because you have to wield code. You have to write code in order to wield LLMs properly, or to their full potential. You want to make them iterate in loops. You want to have chain of thought. You want to do retrieval augmented generation. All these are known to improve LLM performance, and based on the way that we construct transformer models today, they will never be replaced for at least for the next 10, 20 years, I think. So like, those are decent enough things to bet on. And basically what I often say is, if you are worried about AI taking your jobs, then you should become an AI engineer, because that will be the last job to be taken away, because that is the job that is designed to take other jobs. Like mathematically speaking, there will be, in order for AI to take jobs, there needs to be somebody making that happen, and that will be the AI engineer. So if you want job security, you should, be an AI engineer, because that will be the last job to be automated. And then at some point, all of us will live in, post abundance and not worry about jobs at all.
So basically, Elon's right. AI is going to do everything. We're all going to go into a society where we don't have to work anymore. We can just do what we want.
I mean, that's the Star Trek vision of the future. I think that that is a pipe dream that, I think that is, we're basically about 3,000 years too early for that.
But you heard it, guys. That's it. Your next job should be an AI engineer. That's going to be the safest job you have for the next decade.
And there's plenty more. I actually spec'd out 3 types of AI engineers in my talk. So if you guys want to see the AI Engineer Summit, we have a lot of AI engineer examples there.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll go check it out as well. I haven't seen the talks myself, so I'll definitely be checking out the videos myself after this. So Shawn, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I guess before we go, any last words, anything you want to share about projects, or how do people find you on the internet?
Yeah, people can find me, I guess, on Twitter or X at Swix. My main site is swix.io. But the main blog that you guys have been hearing about is latent space. So that's latent.space. I like the short domains. And you'll be hearing more from me about small AI as I build it up.
Okay, great. I'll put those links to your profiles and the latent space as well in the description below, so everyone can go and check it out. Again, Shawn, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And sorry, I had to take you away from your hackathon. By the way, Shawn is taking the time away from his AI hackathon to talk to us today.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of builder energy here. So but I didn't want to reschedule with you because I really wanted to also process Dev Day with you as well. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
No worries. Take it easy, man. I hope to see you again soon.
All right. See you soon.